The following podcast is brought to you by the Crime Prevention 101 Safety Store, your one-stop shop for personal safety. Come by and browse at crimeprevention101.com.
Welcome to Crime Prevention 101, the podcast with an optimistic perspective on a sober subject. The views and ideas expressed on this program are strictly those of the guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and ideas held by the host, associate participants, or sponsors. Now, here's your host, Crime Prevention Specialist Susan Bartelstone.
OMG! Exclamation point. And happy soon to be Valentine's Day, everybody. Yes, the big V Day is coming soon. And you know what? Here in the Universal Dojo, that's the place that we all come together to learn about safety. We're turning our thoughts to love, or to the search for love if you're single, like me. This is Susan Bartelstone, and I'm just loving being here today. And I got my partner in crime, Lydia Perez, with me, who does everything technical around the Universal Dojo. Hey, Lydia.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to the podcast.
And welcome to the dojo. So, Lydia, you doing anything special for Valentine's Day this year?
Apparently, I'm going to be celebrating it with you.
I certainly hope so, because I am celebrating Galentine's Day this year. You know, a little gouda, some sparkling rosé, a nice film noir marathon with some of my besties, and of course that's you.
Thank you.
You know, that's what I'm thinking. You know what Galentine's Day is?
Actually, I don't, so please inform me.
Well, Galentine's Day, it's actually been around since about 2010. It's supposed to have originated on the old Parks and Recreation TV show, which I admit that I really didn't watch. It started as like a pre-Valentine's Day thing where women who were in relationships spent the day before Valentine's Day with their gal pals, so they called it Galentine's Day. But over the years, it got bumped up to be a special day for those of us women who are not in a romantic relationship with anybody. So that's what I thought I would be doing again this year. I've done it several years, but I'm thinking I'm not into the restaurant thing anymore. Not right now. Everybody's getting sick, coughing around me. So I'm just thinking, right, sitting around with some good food and some film noir. Do a little marathon.
Well, I'm looking forward to it because I've never been a part of it. So thank you for inviting me.
Happy Galentine's Day to you then.
Thanks.
All right. So now I got a couple of Valentine's Day statistics I thought were kind of interesting. This was in 2019, and this is according to Hallmark. 145 million greeting cards were exchanged for Valentine's Day in the U.S. alone. So evidently they celebrate this elsewhere, which I don't know where, but why not? You know, Day of Love, right? 250 million roses were grown just for Valentine's Day, and 2.4 billion was spent on candy.
Now that I can relate to.
Well, I'll kill anyone that buys me candy. But I always thought it was chocolate, but no, evidently a large percentage of that 2.4 billion are those chalky pink yucky candy hearts. They call them conversation hearts. I guess people really like to get those, and I can't stand them. I'll never eat those.
To be honest with you, I'm there with you. I don't particularly like them at all. I like reading the messages, but I don't particularly like them. Yeah.
They do taste like chalk to me, and they're sweet chalk, but whatever. And nobody get me candy because I don't want chocolate. Can't go near that anymore right now. Anyway, lastly, according to the National Retail Foundation, Americans spent over $20 billion on Valentine's Day gifts in 2019.
It really is commercialized.
Totally. And none of that came to me, so I'm really annoyed about that. I didn't get anything. All right. I've got some more sobering statistics for 2019. In 2019, statistics show that 1 in 6 women and 1 in 33 men will be raped, that they were raped annually in the United States in 2019. 1 in 6 women, 1 in 33 men.
Wow.
And over 1.5 million women and 834,700 men were raped and or physically assaulted by an intimate partner in the United States.
That's shocking.
It is shocking. Unfortunately, I know this all too well. So my main topic for our pre-Valentine's Day show is how to search for love safely. And particularly when using online dating sites like Match.com or apps like Tinder, which is the most popular way now for most singles. They do it online, and online dating services were expected to reach 413 million active users worldwide by the end of 2022.
You know, it's funny. One time I did have a profile up at Match.com, and to be honest with you, I found it a little bit tiring because I had to keep swiping and looking at everything and seeing all the offers that were coming in, and it got a little intimidating for me. So I ended up closing the profile, but I was on it for a little bit.
I think a lot of us have tried it, and I certainly did try it. And you know how they say you got to kiss a lot of frogs? Well, you know, after a while, I can't there were too many frogs and no prince. So for me, I got a little discouraged with it. But 413 million active users apparently are still out there in the game. So
something's working.
Yeah, it does work for some people. But there are a lot of pitfalls, you know. So in honor of Valentine's Day, we're going to be talking about how to avoid these online dating and relationship horror stories and hopefully prevent some dating nightmares or even sexual assault. So first up, I thought we would revisit an interview that I did with a very funny woman author, and I did this some years ago on my former radio show, which ran on the Voice America Talk Radio Network. The woman's name is Helene Fuchs, and she wrote a very wry, because she had a lot of frogs too. She kissed a lot of frogs before she found the prince. She wrote a very entertaining book, though. It's called Sex, Lies, and the Internet, about the trials and tribulations of jumping into the online dating game for an older woman. And she eventually married a man that she met online, and then she wrote this book about her experiences. And she's got some really good tried and true tips for safe online dating. Then I thought we'd talk a little bit about the love scams that have been around for more than 40 years, but are still prevalent. And they are still affecting millions of women and men of all ages, even though older adults seem to be particularly vulnerable. And then, of course, we're going to have to talk about date rape. But I've got a really terrific product to tell you all you active daters about, and it can really help prevent someone spiking your drink with a date rape drug without you knowing about it. It's a date rape coaster. So be sure to stick around to the end until that. We're going to talk about that at the end of the show. So we're going to take a quick break. And when we're coming back, how to date safely online.
If you're feeling insecure or apprehensive about your safety in the world today, and you should be, if you're looking for the best pepper spray, the best tasers or alarms, or innovative personal safety devices, if you're looking for ebooks to help you heal from trauma, to deal with bullies, to learn self-defense, or whatever concerns you, the Safety Store is where nationally recognized crime prevention specialist Susan Bartelstone has curated the products she recommends and uses herself. Tons of free safety advice is available if you need immediate help. And while you're there, be sure to get your free copy of Susan's guide, Keeping Yourself Safe, All-Time Top Tips. That's the Crime Prevention 101 Safety Store at crimeprevention101.com.
Okay, Lydia, now before we go to my previously recorded interview with Helene Fuchs, I just have to read you a short post that she made on her former blog. The blog isn't active now, but I made note of that post at the time because it was hilarious to me, and it reminded me of some of my own experiences. She titled this post, "Is He a Hairdresser?" And she goes, "He described himself as very handsome. I described myself with blue eyes, blonde hair, and a face like Ava Gardner." And this is my note. I'm pretty sure she was tongue-in-cheek because she didn't look like Ava Gardner. And then she says, about 3 weeks into the romance, and she had quotes around the word romance, he asked me if I had thick hair. When I responded no, he never called or emailed me again.
Oh, that's freaky.
Trust me, I've had experiences like that in after my divorce, my long dating career. I've had and the guys are out there. And maybe he was a hairdresser, who knows? All right. Sex, lies, and the internet.
The following program is being brought to you on the Voice America Variety Channel.
I want to introduce you to my next guest, Helene Fuchs. Helene was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, which is not so far from me, and for 30 years had a pretty typical life. She worked for the telephone company for 3 decades. She married her first husband, Art, in 1968 and lived happily until he passed away from leukemia 30 years later. In 2000, at the age of 60, she started searching for a companion via the internet and met her second husband online, and she's now been married for 7 years. She wrote about all her experiences in her book called Sex, Lies, and the Internet, 32 of her experiences, I should say, most of which are really, really funny, and some, she told me, are kind of sad. And we're going to talk about this book. So, Helene, welcome to Crime Prevention 101.
Oh, thank you for having me, Susan. It's my pleasure.
And it's my pleasure to have you, too, because I think it's very brave of you at the age of 60, after being married for 30 years, to not only start dating again, but to start on the internet. What made you turn to the internet for dates?
Well, I started out looking in the places that I knew when I was younger. I went to a couple of these little bars and stuff, and I realized I was too old for that. And I wasn't finding anybody. And it was just a pickup joint, and I wanted more than that. And at that time, I didn't even know how to use a computer, so I had to go out and buy one and learn it.
Where would you even find bars for 60-year-olds? I don't know. I don't even know any.
It was difficult, and then when I got the hang of it, believe me, I was having a lot of fun. But I did go on several dating sites. You put your profile on, which is extremely hard to do because it's hard to talk about yourself and what you are and what you want. And then it started. Emails, flirts. It just goes little by little, and then you really start to enjoy yourself, even though you think, and it's not as frightening as you think unless you make it frightening.
Okay, now you're going to have to explain that.
Okay, you make it frightening if you don't do things your way. If somebody wants you to meet them after dark in some place you don't want to know, that would be frightening. So you turn it around and you have them meet on your turf during the day at your time. This makes it much easier on yourself.
There's a whole bunch of tips that you gave me. Now, let's save those for a little further along. We're going to go over those so that people can have good experiences, or as good as possible. Let's go back a little bit to, on the blurb for your book, it says that you were looking for more than rocking chair companionship for your old age.
Right.
So what were you looking for?
I was looking for
you don't sound like someone to sit in the rocking chair.
No way. Yeah. I wanted somebody who, with a sense of humor. I wanted somebody that would enjoy laughing with me. I wanted somebody who would go to a dance with me. I wanted somebody to have a meal with and not sit by myself all the time. And I wanted good conversation. If I didn't meet anybody that could put words together, then that was the first and last time I would meet them. Mm-hmm. I had very high standards, and I think that's what we have to do. We have to say, I based a lot on, this might be terrible to admit, but a lot of times, most of the time, you would meet somebody online and they would be writing a letter to you.
Okay.
And if there were a whole lot of misspellings due to them not knowing the language, it sounds terrible. I felt that they weren't intelligent enough, because I'm a fairly intelligent woman. I'm not a brilliant woman, but I like to have a good conversation. And if you can't have a good conversation, then it's nothing to me.
Like a
and
job
I think
interview.
no woman should lower herself to that.
It's like a job interview in a way, because
Yes,
if you've got any typos or misspellings on there.
But you have to realize that somebody is also doing that to you.
True.
Somebody is reading your email, and you want to be intelligent, and sometimes you can see just by what they write is what they're interested in. So the first thing I learned on the computer was how to block somebody.
Okay. Good.
No, and this is very important, because when you do meet somebody and they get a little persistent, or they feel that they really want to meet you and you don't want to, you will be inundated with emails, or if you were foolish enough to give out your instant message, then that's what's going to happen. So you have to learn to say no thank you, but if they won't take no for an answer, then you have to learn to block that person.
Okay.
Because it turns into harassment of a kind.
Which is one of the things that we're going to be talking about, because we don't want that.
Yeah.
Talk about a couple of the good experiences. And there was one bad experience you told me about someone who kept groping you, and we'll talk about that. But talk about just one experience that really stood out in your mind to the point before you met your present husband.
Okay. I went out with this one gentleman for a few months, and he was a very nice man. I was 61 at the time. He was 72. And he seemed a very nice man. He was very kind, very gentle. We went out for dinner a few times. And then I found out that he had his grown son living at home. And that was not a problem, except his grown son was afraid that I would take his home away from him. And it started all kinds of fights and harassments from the son.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, because here is a fellow who's 48 years old. He is not married. He had a long pigtail in the back. He never worked. His father had to clean the house while he sat around. This fellow was thinking of getting very serious with me, and I thought there would be something there, but there's just so much you can take when you're dealing with a 48-year-old man who thinks you're going to steal away his home and he'll have to leave, So there were a lot of strange things. There were funny ones, too. I met a man who was online all the time. We wanted to meet, and we had very nice conversations on the phone, and he asked me this question, which I thought was rather weird. He said, "Do you have extremely thick hair?" And I said, "No, I don't." So he hung up, and I never heard from him again.
Yeah.
So
I knew what he wanted. Listen,
I don't know what he wanted. I mean, I know there was a cousin It on the Addams Family, so I don't know if this is what he was looking for, but obviously it wasn't me. So
some years ago, Helene, I have to tell you this story. I haven't told this in a while. I went to one of these singles things.
Yeah.
And this was quite a number of years ago, and I noticed this man, and he was kind of attractive, walking around, and he was talking to everybody, it looked like, and he'd talk to them for a few minutes, and then he'd walk on, and then he'd talk to someone else, and finally he made his way to me, and he's talking to me, and he seemed very nice, and he seemed very interesting. And then he goes, "By the way, do you like to be spanked?" And I said, "Well, no, not really. And if you know me at all, you know that this is a ridiculous thing to ask me." And he said, "Okay, thanks." And he turned and walked away. But I have to tell you, he left with somebody.
Oh, jeez.
Because I kept my eye on him. He found someone. That's called screening. I've been talking with Helene Fuchs, the author of Sex, Lies, and the Internet. And I'm just going to run over some of the tips that she's got for keeping the dating experience safe. Helene, you wrote a couple of things to me. Now, you already talked about you made the appointments. You picked the place where to meet. You picked for a daylight, a restaurant where you knew. What else are some of the things you did to keep your experiences safe?
Always know where you are and how to get home. Always carry your cell phone with you. Always let somebody close to you know where you are. Always be safe. Never be desperate. Never jump into anything too quickly. I learned that very carefully. And I also never parked my car close to where the meeting place was. And then I always let the person that I was meeting leave first. Therefore, knowing that I would not be followed.
Okay, very good. And I know that you also mentioned that you never, you wouldn't meet someone from Craigslist at a motel or something.
Absolutely not. And that's what gets a lot of people in trouble. Always, always make sure that you know where the place is and either someplace that you know very well and that people know you there. So you even have people that are on the premises where you're meeting that will keep an eye on you. You can even ask a manager of a restaurant to keep an eye on you. They will be glad to do that for you.
Yeah, I like that idea a lot. Now, Helene, where can people get Sex Lies on the Internet?
You can get it at my publisher, Kirkhouse.com, KIRKHOUSE.com. It's on Amazon.com.
So I really just loved her spirit. I loved the interview that she gave me. I'm just so sorry I had to cut a lot out for technical reasons, but I want to make sure that I get some of the tips that she gives that I had to cut out. And there's plenty of tips left in there. But one of the tips that she mentioned that I had to cut out was to make sure to let at least 2 people know that you're out on a date with someone that you don't know, and let them know where you're going to be. And even if you expect, I think I'm going to be back by 9 o'clock, call me at 10, whatever, just so that people are alerted that you're out on this date with somebody you don't know. And
So
I think
true.
that's
that's true.
Yeah, that's a great tip, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And there are also a couple of these free phone apps that I think are very important to have in case there's a problem on the date. And one of them that I like, and I'm going to see if I can sell this one in the store. It's called Noonlight. It's NOONLIGHT, and it's a free app. And I have it on my phone. It's a 24/7 call center. They have a direct line to 911. They also do have some fee-based services like fall detection or broken glass detected in your home, indicating there might be a break-in. But the free services, they will contact you. And I hit the app by mistake, and sure enough, they called me. And I had the app on my phone like 3 years, and I hit that by mistake, and they sure did. They called me. Is everything okay? And I said, yeah, I hit it by mistake. And she said, if we didn't get an answer from you, we were going to call 911. And we know exactly where you are because we have the GPS in the app. So I thought, wow, that's really great. And for some people, the enhanced services, the fee services might be well worth it. So I want to let you all know, Noonlight app, and it's right in your phone's app store.
That's a good one. I've never heard of that one. So
yeah,
that's a good resource. Yeah.
Believe me, if you need help, and they can hear what you're saying too. So you don't even have to help me. They'll hear it and they'll call 911 and say, there she is on the corner of 34th and 6th, whatever.
Yeah.
All right. And the second app on the phone that I want to tell you guys about, it's also free. It's called ICE, ICE, and that means in case of emergency. And in there you list your emergency contacts in the phone, who to call in case there's a problem. This is not necessarily like a rape scenario or anything, but if you have an accident, if you fall down, if whatever it is, where the police can go right into the app and it'll say first contact is my brother Jan and have the phone number. So
that's interesting because I actually don't have the app for that, but in my phone, what I did was when I entered the contact, I entered I.C.E and then the person's name. And so if anyone were to get my phone, they would see ICE, that they should contact this individual immediately. I have about 2 ICEs listed on my own personal contacts, but I had no idea there was an app, so that's a good one. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and I'm not going to say that it's wrong what you did, but I don't know if the cops will know to look in your address book. They may, but they will definitely look on the ICE app. So since it's free, get that one too.
Yeah, I definitely will. That's a good one.
Okay. Now the other thing that Helene said, which I thought, and there were a lot. I'm gonna have all sorts of tip sheets for you guys after the show, but verify the information that the person is telling you with a reputable third-party service like Truthfinder or binverified.com. And that last one especially, that there's a really interesting program called the Catfish Show. I don't know if
I've heard of it. Yeah.
And catfishing is when people just give you a phony profile and just string you along with all kinds of lies. People lie outrageously on these dating apps. They lie about their age, their weight, their financial situation especially. They show pictures of themselves that are 20 years old. They pass off other people's photos as their own. The statistics I saw were that 51% of the people lie on their profile. And, look, you could take 5 pounds off or maybe 10 pounds off your weight, but you can't take 40.
That's true.
Or 50. You can't take 20 years off of your picture.
Right.
So binverified.com, Truthfinder. If you have any qualms about the person at all, if it sounds too good to be true, check them out.
I'm sure that there's a fee to that, though, right?
I am not positive about that, but honestly, for my safety,
it's worth it.
I think it's I think it's worth it. Maybe not for the first date, but for the second date or the third date, if he's starting to look too good, or if you start to see a lot of red flags and you still want to continue with that relationship, verify them, or even consider engaging a private investigator, depending on the finances of what's going on in each person's relationship. So just those are a couple of tips that she gave that I wanted to make sure you got. Now, Lydia, I got a little joke for you.
Let me hear it.
Okay.
Let me hear it.
If older women seeking young men are called cougars, what are older men seeking younger women called? Millionaires.
There's an actual site where you can date a millionaire. You know that, right?
I'm on there. I did not know that. Okay, once the show ends, I'm going to be, what's it called, Date a Millionaire? I'm there.
I don't know the name of it, but there was a show on it once where they talked about women who actually date millionaires. They put their profile up, they go out with a millionaire. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's an intimate relationship that you have with them. It could just be companionship or so forth. And, obviously the trade-off would be finances or, material wealth or something. But yeah, it's to date a millionaire, basically. It's an app. There's an actual app for that.
I'm afraid they're looking for 24-year-olds.
I'm not in that category.
But you know
anymore,
what?
So.
I'm going to go to that website, and then I'm going to go to binverified.com.
So you are too funny.
So there you go. And if I've offended any millionaires out there, I'm happy to meet with you and apologize in person. All right. Let's take another quick break. When we come back, we're going to go into our more sober side. We're going to talk about romance scams, when love really costs you.
You're listening to Crime Prevention 101 with Susan Bartelstone. Susan would like to remind you that no absolutes exist in a crime scenario, and no advice can possibly address every variable. Each situation should be evaluated individually and responded to in a way you instinctively judge best. It's Susan's aim on this show to provide you with the information and options that will help you make that instinctive assessment quickly and safely. And if you're already a survivor of the kind of crime we're talking about on the show today, or any other crime for that matter, please remember that there are no right or wrong responses in a criminal encounter, and nothing that happened to you was your fault. Even if you think you used bad judgment in a situation and left yourself vulnerable, that's never an excuse for a crime or for violence. So please, call yourself a survivor, not a victim, and understand that with time, distance, and the proper professional help, you can put what happened into perspective and get on with your life.
And we are back. Now, don't forget, you can follow the show on Facebook, on Instagram, on the crimeprevention101.com website, and of course on the YouTube podcast page. You can also message me with your comments or any questions that you may have about your own personal safety. If you want to go old school, contact me at solutions@crimeprevention101.com. Now, before the break, we've been talking about dating safely. Now let's talk about when dating can cost you everything that you have. Now, Lydia, are you familiar with these romance scams?
Yes, I'm very familiar with them. I had one that tried to be done on me, and it didn't work out. So yes, I'm very familiar with these.
Yeah, I'm always shocked, and I'm going to give you some statistics a little later on, exactly how many people fall for this, because it seems to me it's been everywhere. It's been talked about, but there are people that are not familiar with them. So let's get people familiar with this so it doesn't happen to them.
Or it's also that they're not familiar with it, but also I think depending on what their circumstances are, they tend to fall because, there's emotions, there's need, wants, and things of that nature. So they're not really looking for the signs, if you will. So I think what we have in store for them will be a great education for them to keep in mind.
I certainly hope so. Now, why don't you ask me what people want to know about romance scams?
Yes, why don't I ask you? So, Susan, let me ask you, what exactly are romance scams?
Okay, now on this show, I'm only going to be talking about online dating scams. There are different kinds of these romance scams. They're also called romance fraud, but we're only talking about online dating on the show today. Mm-hmm. And romance scam is when you believe that you've made a legitimate connection or a match mostly through an online dating site or a social media site. I know it can happen on dating apps like Tinder and Bumble, but I think it's less likely there because the key is that you're never actually going to meet this person face to face. And I think that on Tinder or Bumble, you pretty much expect that you will. Mm-hmm. But the person that you're going to be talking to is in fact using a fake profile, and there was always going to be an excuse why you cannot meet the person face to face. And it can and does happen with con men who meet, date, and marry their victims with the same result, conning them out of all their money. But that is a different show. We're gonna talk about only the ones that occur online. And you're right, when you mentioned it before, the online scammer manipulates or grooms the other person over a relatively short period of time, actually, gains their trust, and ultimately they either can ask them for money or they can obtain enough personal information to steal their identity, or they can set them up to launder money.
In my case, the gentleman wanted me to send him money because there was a big fire that happened in his hometown, and he needed to help everyone and the children.
Very typical. Very typical. I know that you were too smart to fall for that. Yep. Was this someone that you met on something like Match.com or eHarmony?
It was through Facebook. It kind of started off as a conversation. Turned out it was a fake profile. Of course, I'm automatically suspicious anyway, so it just the facts weren't aligning, and I was just
any site where they can message you, direct message you, or words with friends. I was told because you can message them. Any of those sites are just full of these scammers, and the sites do try to take precautions and they do warn you, but there's nothing you can really do to prevent it because they're so out there. And something that most people don't know, it actually can be a team of organized criminals, a boiler room type operation scamming the person, not just one. You think you're talking to one person, but it's not necessarily just the one person. This gets very convoluted and interesting. Another fact about them, they are often based in Nigeria, and that's where they originated in the 1980s. And they used to call them Nigerian romance scams, but now they don't really use that term so much because these scammers come from China, from the Philippines, from just about anywhere. And in 2020, there was more than 33,000 victims and the losses of more than $304 million.
That's just crazy.
And they do target men, but it's much more that they target women.
So then let me ask you, what are the most common romance scams that you've heard about?
The top ones, and this one we're going to talk about on the show, romance scams asking for money, ID theft scams where they're fishing for your personal information, and they establish an identity other than you. It's a fraudulent identity, and they can rack up all sorts of bills and charges. They buy houses in your name, cars in your name, and leave you stuck with the bills. And then it's called the money mule romance scam. And over the course of the relationship, like what happened to you, the scammer might ask you purchase gift cards for them. Gift cards, big red flag. Rub that red flag right up the flagpole. Cryptocurrency, foreign currencies. They can ask you to open a bank account for them, send and receive packages, and this is actually a way to launder money.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that one.
Yes,
All right.
exactly right.
So then what would you say are the warning signs or the red flags for these romance scams?
Okay, first red flag, the scammer claims to be American, most of them, not all, but most, working overseas or in another state from you. They say they're doctors, they're in the military, they're engineers or business developers working overseas. But the key factor is they have a perfect excuse for why they can't meet you in person. Second red flag, there are some language quirks.
Yes. Yes, there are. Definitely. In my case. Mm-hmm.
Okay. A slight unidentifiable accent, doesn't know common cultural references or slang words. They may say that they're Greek, but they have an accent that's not Greek. And also look for inconsistencies in what they've told you. One day, for example, they tell you how they love chicken, and the next day they can't stand chicken. And that's where the key is, that it might be a boiler room or an organized team that's doing the scam, because they don't always know what the one person has said from the other person. I don't know how they keep their notes on.
The stories aren't aligned.
Correct. When you start to see that little inconsistencies, red flag up the flagpole. So that's 2 red flags. Third red flag, video chats, FaceTime, whatever method you're using, it never works properly. So mostly it's the sound that works, but not the picture, or vice versa. The picture works, not the sound, due to poor connections, time zone differences. If you call, they are not around to answer. And people go for a couple of months never really seeing the person exactly face to face. They may see like a flat picture, but never the live person.
Yeah, and those months, there's emotional investment in there. So that's what makes it even more difficult.
Absolutely. These people really know how to work on you and gain your trust. I'm going to talk about a little bit that right this minute, as a matter of fact. That's the next red flag. They are just too good to be true. And they want a serious relationship, even marriage, extremely quickly, like, right away. Like, I met you in next month, let's get married. These scammers love bomb their victims. They shower them with affection. They are incredibly attentive. So they'll talk to you for hours at a time, an hour in the morning, 2 or 3 hours every night. They are totally validating everything about the person being scammed, and they are trying to become their whole world. And if you are vulnerable, and so many of especially these women, and especially if they're older and they're alone, this kind of attention, it just doesn't happen in the real world like that. They're just not that nice. They're not that good.
Right.
They're going to tell you about their problems as much as they're going to say how wonderful you are. And the final thing about that, Lydia, they give you the subtle impression that if you don't comply and you don't do what they're wanting you to do, they're going to be moving along. And the next red flag, and I'm going to put 3 red flags on the flagpole for this, asking for money. And it's like you said, your scammer wanted money for a fire. That's very common. They have to help their family back home. Someone's sick. Someone needs an operation. The guy claims that he's got a high-paying job, but they're dealing with banking issues because they're overseas. So they can't pay for their basic necessities. They can't access their bank account. They need your help. They might say that they're suddenly in legal trouble and unable to pay their fees or their fines. Can you help them? Or, and very common, they need help with travel costs so they can come to the United States to finally see you.
Yeah. I remember that well.
Now, the other scam we talked about, the business developer, it's not necessarily romantic, but they've definitely conned you and got your trust. And now they tell you that they've come across a once-in-a-lifetime investment opportunity that's overseas where they are, something they're working on. They want you to be part of it, and they're going to ask you for money for that, or they're going to ask you to do them a favor. We talked about this a little bit, ask you to deposit a check for them and send them cash, buy them gift cards for foreign currency, cryptocurrency, send it to them. And of course, they're going to promise to pay you back, but the check is going to bounce. The gift cards are going to disappear. The cryptocurrency, you might as well flush that down the toilet. Mm-hmm. Sometimes if you send them a check, they'll send you money in a check that gives them access to your checking account. They can clean out your bank account that way. But what's most alarming at this point, when people do get suspicious, these scammers have been known to produce documentation of their claims. Official-looking letterhead, photocopies of passports, loan agreements supposedly coming from a lawyer. You know, if they've got a business prospect for you, they send you a prospectus, a lawyer's sheet on it. They'll send you photocopies of plane tickets. They are very good at producing these kinds of things. So when you start to get wind of something suspicious, people have told me, they've even said, are you Nigerian? Are you from the Nigerian scammer or something like that? And they've got the answers for you. Oh, I'll send you the copy of the business investment that I want to interest you in. But any money that you send is never going to be repaid. And if you question them too much, they will disappear and all their accounts will be deleted.
It's crazy.
One little also note about that, a friend of mine's, her boyfriend's daughter got caught up in this. And this was a lawyer. This was a smart woman. Again, it was a guy working overseas. I think he was a doctor. And she sent him $50,000 of her inheritance and started sending him computers and all sorts of electronics equipment. That's another thing that they will ask for until the father actually got wind of it and put a stop to it. So that $50,000 gone in the wind.
It's just crazy. It really is. It's surprising how so many people fall for that, you know? All right, so then let me ask you this. As I just stated, a lot of people fall for this. So what can we do to protect ourselves online from these scams?
Okay, well, first of all, Lydia, I'm going to write up my 10 tips for online dating safety and my romance scam tips. I'm only going to read a few of them online. Go to the crimeprevention101.com website. Go to the safety tips page. There's a ton of information there. And all of these tips are going to be posted every show. Hopefully I'm going to get a new set of tip sheets for you. So you've got handy information. You can send it to the people you know. If somebody you know is someone's buzzing around them that sounds like a scammer, send these tips to them. But I just want to read a few things that you can do. You want to check out a prospective date or boyfriend or whatever it's going to be. If they're online, you may not meet them. There are two websites that you can check out the photos. The first is called tineye.com, and that's TINEYE.com. And also do a Google image search and verify their information online. A lot of times, like I said before, they will use pictures of other people, especially since you're never going to see them in person. You're never going to actually see them face to face. So do the Google search and make sure that picture doesn't show up elsewhere with someone else's name on it. And you can also try binverified.com. Another thing that I think makes a lot of sense, have a dedicated email address only reserved for your online dates. So they can't get into your personal accounts and crap up the accounts. And you can always delete this dedicated this dedicated email address if things start to go sour with the relationship. And Google and a number of these places will give you a free email account. I think you can get up to 6 email accounts if you have a website, something like that.
That's a good idea. I didn't think about that. That's a good idea.
I recommend that if you're going to be doing the online dating. And even if people contact you on social media and they want to talk to you personally off of the app or off of the website, give them that dedicated email address. And you can also get a free phone line, Google Voice, give you an alternative phone number. So until you really know the person is for real, they don't have access to your actual phone line. And this can also help prevent stalking, which can be another very sad outcome from bad online dating scenarios.
Agreed with that one, yeah.
Of course, I'm going to say this one again. Never open a bank account for anyone. Don't buy them gift cards. Don't send or receive packages. They ask you, would you mind if I give you a package to hold? Don't do it. Or don't, and like my friends send the computer stuff. He gave her another address to send that computer to. Totally bogus. No way to find that. That's called a money mule, and it can make you liable for criminal charges. So I can't stress that enough. Don't do it. You also want to make sure that your financial accounts and your emails and social media accounts have secure passwords and two-factor or multi-factor authorization. And two-factor or multi-factor authorization.
So it's so funny, Susan, if we can go back up to the previous point that you made when you said, when you spoke about the money mule. It's an interesting turn of events when, you fall for this scam, and then eventually it turns out where you can be facing criminal charges because you've done something that you shouldn't have done, in terms of sending money, or if you're sending money overseas, or if you're even sending cryptocurrency or things of that nature. So that's an interesting concept and something I'm sure we can touch upon later on, in other podcasts.
Yeah. That's a whole show in itself. I'm just skimming the tip of the iceberg on some of these things. But yeah, this is when love really does cost you. That's why I use that title. And then the last tip that I do want to give you, if you've been scammed, or if you suspect that you're being set up, if you were contacted through a dating app, contact them. They've got their own methods for tracking these things down. And you can also report it to the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center. And it's www.ic3.gov. There's also a site called onlinepersonalswatch.com and a site called romancescams.org. So that's if you've been scammed or you suspect that you're being scammed. Hey, Lydia. Now, the last item that I want to talk about today is the possibility of date rape as a result of online dating. So we've kind of moved from the lighter side of the dating to the serious, and now to the very, very serious. And a lot of people think they know what date rape is, and maybe you do as well. I don't think they really have a real true idea of what it is. So date rape is also called acquaintance rape, and they're usually lumped together, but they are not the same thing. Both are defined as forced or coerced sex with or without the assistance of wanted or unwanted drugs. And that's very important because it's almost always involved in these date rapes, some kind of drugs or alcohol or drugs. And alcohol is the most common date rape drug, by the way. It's considered that.
Yeah.
A couple of statistics. Most rape victims are females raped by males. That's about 79.6%. 1.4% of victims are men. Perpetrators can be same sex. It's not the most common are females raped by males, but it does happen a great deal within the same sex communities. The stats are not so good on that. That's why I don't have really good ones, but it definitely is out there. And it does happen there.
Mm-hmm.
Date rape occurs between partners, ex-partners, boy or girlfriends, ex-boy or ex-girlfriends, and or casual dates. And that's about 51% of the time with the date rape.
That's the majority, if you think about it.
Actually, no. The majority of the rapes are acquaintance rapes. Well, that is acquaintance rapes. Yeah, that is the majority. That's what acquaintance rape is. Occurs between acquaintances, but not just partners,
mm-hmm.
friends of friends, friends of the family, bosses, co-workers, or the guy that delivers your groceries. And that's about 40% of the time. So 51% of the time it is a date or an ex-husband, wife, partner,
mm-hmm.
commonly.
It's someone you know. It's almost someone you know.
You know, overwhelmingly, as opposed to being raped by a stranger. That's maybe 20% of rapes are stranger rapes. The majority of rapes are perpetrated by someone that is known to the victim in some way. And I mean, I don't know exactly how well you might know the person that packs up the deliveries at your grocery store, but it's not someone that you've never seen before. It's not a total...
Right. It's not a totally unknown person. That's actually a scary one, though, right? If you think about it, if you're home alone, you order groceries, you just don't know. You don't know who you're opening the door to. So that's an interesting one.
That's a whole other show, is how to be safe in your
I know.
home. And you know what? I think we're going to plan for that show because it's important. It's one of the things people ask me. What do I do if someone breaks into the house? So believe me, I got stuff for you to do. All right. Tips are on the website, too, by the way. All right, one more statistic on this. 1 in 5 girls will fall victim to rape or attempted rape before they reach 25. 42% occurs before the age of 18. So this crime, date or acquaintance rape, is really prevalent in high schools, colleges, and the young single dating scene. Also very, very scary. Now, I've got a tip sheet called Enduring Betrayal, Date and Acquaintance Rape. It's on the safety tips page in the website. Please be sure to take a look at that. And I want you to look at the featured product in the safety store this month. It's the Date Rape Drug Test Coaster, and they also make test strips. Now, sometimes drugs are used to ensure sexual compliance rather than force. And remember the Cosby case? That was the whole case, is that he reportedly, allegedly, drugged these women to the point where they were unconscious and raped them. So these so-called date rape drugs are slipped into a person's drink, and they can become unconscious with some of them even after a small sip, 1 or 2 small sips. And an example of a date rape drug, they call them roofies. It's rohypnol is the technical word for it. GHB, which is gamma hydroxybutyrate. Ketamine, which was a horse tranquilizer, I believe, and I don't know if they still use it for that. Ecstasy, it's well known. People used to take that in the clubs, and in a small amount, I guess you dance very well, but it can also knock you out.
You dance very well. That's funny.
Well, they take them and they dance, you know. But,
yeah. No. I get how you associate it. Yeah. That was pretty good.
But trust me, you can become unconscious on ecstasy and not know what you're doing and be set up for this kind of assault. You could also, prescription painkillers have been used. Sleeping pills have been used. The key is that these date rape drugs are colorless, odorless, and flavorless. You just don't know. Now, one of the things, Lydia, we've always advised people, never leave your drink
unattended.
Amen. Right? You've heard that, right? And by the way, that's also your soda. Not everybody's drinking. You go to a party, you go to a bar, you get your club soda or your Diet Coke. You're standing around the bar, you get up to dance, you go to the bathroom, you leave your drink there because obviously you're not going to take it with you when you go to the bathroom. Yuck. And when you come back, there's a possibility. Someone could have slipped something into it. You also need to be suspicious if you're at a house party and there's a punch bowl. Those are known to be spiked. So this coaster, it fits in a pocketbook or a pocket, and they have also test strips. And this will detect the presence of ketamine and GHB, which are 2 of the most popular date rape drugs. You just, when you come back from wherever it is you've left your drink, take a couple of drops and put it on the coaster or on the strip. And if it turns pink, it means there's been ketamine put in it. If it turns green, it means it's GHB. And if it turns blue, there's some other suspicious substance that was put into your drink.
I was going to ask you that. It's like, is it only testing for 2 or other? Because you mentioned there were a variety of them. And so I'm glad it's covering. So anything that turns blue is the quote unquote other category.
Right. It will definitely let you know there's something if it can't identify what it is. One of the things that we say is if you have to leave your drink and you don't have your coaster with you, or you're really not sure what blue means, order a new drink.
Why go through all that? Just order a new drink. Yeah,
don't take any chances with it. It's good to know that somebody slipped something in there because you want to get your butt out of that party or out of that bar or whoever it is that you're with because they're doing something that you're not going to be happy about. But just to be safe, get a new drink. These, as like I said, these are small. They'll fit into a pants pocket. You know, guys carry them too. They cost about $1 per coaster. The strips come in a pack of 10. They're going to be featured on the store, the safety store. Check it out. Date Rape Drug Detection Coaster. Product of the month.
Nice. That's a good one. I like that one.
Okay, Lydia, that wraps it up for now. I'm going to put links to my guests on the social media pages, the Facebook, the YouTube, the podcast page. You'll find if you want to get sex lives on the internet, you're going to find it. I'm going to put resources on there. Lydia, give just a few resources that I didn't read.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Not a problem. So if you are interested in finding out more about Helene Fuchs' books, Sex, Lies, and the Internet, it can be found on Amazon. If you want to know more about Enduring Betrayal, the Date Acquaintance Rape Tip Sheet, and the Romance Scams, When Love's Cause tip sheet, both can be found on the Crime Prevention 101 website on the Safety Tips page. There's also the Date Drug Test Coaster and the test strips Susan just shared with us. That's also going to be found in the Crime Prevention 101 Safety Store at the crimeprevention101.com website. And for resources for victims of date and acquaintance rape, there's the National Sexual Assault Hotline, 1-800-656-HOPE or 4673. There's also RAINN, RAINN, that stands for Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, and that's www.rainn.org. And lastly, February is National Teen Dating Violence Awareness and Prevention Month, so definitely check out loveisrespect.org and teamdvmonth.org. Susan?
Great. All right. Now, Lydia, we've got some exciting shows coming up in the next few months. March is Women's History Month, and we've got some surprises for you for March. April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, so obviously we're going to have to talk about that. And very special future show coming up, Crime Prevention 101 presents The Psychic Sherlocks, where we ask our hand-picked psychics to solve cold cases, like who actually was Jack the Ripper and who really did kill the Black Dahlia. We got some amazing cases that we're going to work on, and we're going to solve them once and for all. And of course, lots more tips and resources. So like we always say here in the Universal Dojo, it'd be a crime not to listen.
So stay tuned and stay safe.
Oh.